Good evening, River Club. This is not how I anticipated to address you all this evening, but here we are. I once did a members tasting event in a blackout where we all had votive candles on our tables to illuminate, and that was one of the more particular wine events that I've hosted. But this is definitely up there. So, and it's unfortunate that I can't be there because I've gotten to know many of you, and I've gotten the pleasure of talking about wine for so many dinners. And one of my favorite wine regions in the world is Burgundy. So I've been very excited about this particular dinner tonight. And I'm not alone in this. I think there's a lot of wine lovers, wine aficionados that in their wine journey they discover Burgundy. And there's a couple directions to go. One is to say this is too complex and impenetrable, or it has this allure, this kind of beguiling nature to it that draws you in. And it's almost like you sit down and you have the conversation saying, I think it's time for us to take our relationship to the next level. And that's when you start buying books like this, and you get out your vineyard maps, and you start looking at why this particular village from Burgundy tastes different than this particular village down just immediately south to it. It can be a little complex, and I hope to sort of puncture that tonight. And really the best way to understand any wine region is to drink the wines from that region. And if you have the means to drink copious amounts of Burgundy, I wish I had the means, because sometimes the price can be a little bit challenging. So what is Burgundy? Burgundy is a place. It is a little sliver of land, north to south, that's in between Dijon and, it's easier to do this in front of people, Dijon and Lyon, right? And to traverse this region is to go between village to village, in these kind of 1,000-year-old medieval towns, and in between each town is vineyards, as far as the eye can see. And some of those vineyards are outlined by a stone wall, and that stone wall could have been built 1,000 years ago, up to 1,500 years ago, by some abbey or group of monks that decided that this particular parcel created wines of such distinction that it deserved a name, and it deserved its own designation. So they would build walls around those vineyards. So that's your first little introduction into one thing that makes it so alluring. One thing that makes it so complex then is all of these sort of individual vineyards that oftentimes that's the only thing that's going to be on the label that gives you an indication that it's even Burgundy. But what are we doing here? We're drinking one of two grapes. You have red Burgundy and white Burgundy. If you're drinking red Burgundy, it's Pinot Noir. If you're drinking white Burgundy, it's Chardonnay. Not much complexity to that, right? And if you like Pinot Noir and you like Chardonnay, you're already on your way to developing a proper love of Burgundy. Now, if you don't like Chardonnay, I might posit that it's because you've never had white Burgundy. White Burgundy is in a class of its own. Chardonnay is the most widely planted grape in the world, and it doesn't taste like Chardonnay planted anywhere else in the world than it does when it grows in Burgundy. Now, to illustrate that point, we're starting with Domaine Vocoret Chablis. I have a bottle here. Now, to look at this, you would never even know that Chardonnay is in here. One of the things that makes it so complex. But let's break this down. This is Domaine Vocoret Iffy. So the house of the family of Vocoret and Sons, right? 2022 is what you're drinking. I happen to have an older bottle. But then the largest print on here is actually where it comes from, because the place that the grapes are grown is what distinguishes what you have in your glass. So it is from the very north part of Burgundy in Chablis. That's the region. This is coming from a first-class vineyard, a Premier Cru. More on that later. And that single vineyard is Les Vaillants. And up here we have another distinction, which is Ville Vigne, meaning old vines, which is proper. You could put old vine on any bottle of California if they're planted 6 months ago. This has to be from vines at least 40 years old. Now, on to the character. This is a glass of Chardonnay. The Burgundians don't call it Chardonnay. They call it Chablis because it's Chardonnay that grows in the very north part of Burgundy, which is the region of Chablis. That's the concept of terroir. That's the thing that really does drive us to a deeper understanding of wine. I can't smell anything. That, again, this is Chardonnay, but it is Chardonnay from Chablis, and it doesn't taste like Chardonnay. It tastes like Chardonnay grown in this one region. It is lemony. It's got this gorgeous little citrus fruit note and almost like underripe pear, maybe a little bit of apple as well. But the fruit is understated, and there's this backbone of a stony minerality. Crushed rocks, wet stones, slate. Some people say chalk. I think that's very descriptive. If that's a little hard for you to translate to what you're smelling, think this is no called petrichor. Petrichor is the smell of rain on a summer day. Rain hitting dry concrete. You know that kind of romantic, ethereal smell. You will get that in this wine. Hence the concept of terroir. Now, to walk through vineyards in Chablis, the soils are stark white, almost blinding on a summer day. And that white compound is made out of calcareous clay. It is chalk. It's called Kimmeridgian soil, made out of, oddly enough, fossilized marine life. There you will find fossilized oyster shells in these soils. Great pairing with Chablis, by the way. But sure enough, vines planted to this limestone chalky soil, you end up getting that note in the wine. And I'm not saying that there's actually molecularly that there's limestone in this wine, no. But the essence of it somehow has a way of transferring the essence of that soil into the wine. Might sound a little hocus pocus, but I encourage you to give it a good swirl and a sustained sniff. Give it an extra beat and find out how much minerality there is in this wine. Just thinking of now knowing where it's coming from. That's the connection. That was the hook for me. That was the push that gave the shove, this little concept of terroir that really elevated my love and appreciation for wine. And we're just getting started. So Ville Vigne, Premier Cru, Vaillant. I hope you enjoyed as much as I do, and we'll be back to talk a little about sort of another side of Chardonnay. Santé. Cheers.